Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the Road to Rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward and uplift others who are struggling through dark times. My special guest is an environmental journalist, a workshop leader, professional speaker, and blogger. She's also the author of the award winning book, You Aren't Depression's Victim. And her work has been published in newspapers, regional and national magazines, blog sites, and a lot more. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Debra Atlas to the show. Debra, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Albert, very much.
Oh, absolutely. So, we have a lot to unpack here. I'm very, very excited to talk about this book. Okay, you aren't depression's victim. I, by the way, I love the title. It seems to tell in a
Thank you.
very, oh, absolutely. It seems to tell what the book is about in a very succinct way, very concise way, and just the words of the title itself hits you right between the eyes in a profound way. Now, we're going to discuss the book here in a little bit, but I wanted to see if you can first give a little context or a glimpse into your journey and the inspiration that led you to the work you're doing today.
Now that's a loaded question.
Yeah,
Um,
it sure is.
I have to say right off the back, I never planned to make this book. I've had depression since age 2, but I
Wow.
was yeah, I wasn't diagnosed in my mid-40s. And so that was a lot of years spent in despair and upset for no apparent reason.
Hmm. Hmm.
And even before I was officially diagnosed, I came down with chronic fatigue. I was living out in the country in Northern California, and there wasn't anybody around, and the only thing I could do was occasionally start to write a little bit of journaling here and there to try and figure out what was going on. Because by the way, anybody that has depression that gets seriously ill throws them deeper into depression. So it was very intense. And over a period of years, I kept adding to that journaling. And but again, never any intention to have it be a book until COVID hit
Yeah.
and everything stopped.
Hmm.
And that's when I looked into my computer files and oh my God, look at all I've got here. That's
Yeah.
when I realized it had to be a book and the timing was perfect. So that's how it came about.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, Thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, when COVID hit and everything just shut down, can you imagine how anyone's depression, say prior to the shutdown, prior to COVID, and now you have this on top of everything.
Uh,
Someone who either has problems with anxiety or problems with depression or problems with both. I mean, it could be exponential that
and
was brought on,
it
right?
has, I in my research when I decided to make this book, and I looked at the statistics about depression and anxiety, and the numbers since COVID exploded.
Wow.
And even now, the numbers have not gone down very much. In some cases, they continue to escalate. So we're
Wow.
still feeling the impact of what happened when COVID became officially a pandemic.
Amazing. Amazing. So we are still feeling those pains, even though let's say we're a year or two removed
Yeah,
from the last biggest spread. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods in terms
no.
of depression or anxiety.
Let me give you an example.
Hmm.
The number of American adults who are dealing with mental illness or depression is now 1 in 4. and it used to
1.4.
be 1 in 5,
Oh, 1 in 4.
edging towards 1 in 6.
1 in
Women
6.
are most hit harder hit than men, and it used to be 1 in 4, now it's 1 in 3, heading towards 1 in 2. And teenagers are absolutely the hardest hit group of anybody, and they're still dealing with it because I ask them at the book signings that I have when teenagers show up, and if you get them separated from their parents to ask them the question, every single one says it hasn't gotten better.
Mm.
So it's very concerning.
Yeah, yeah. No, it sure is. Wow. That is that's an eye-opening perspective.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
No, it truly is. Um, One thing I wanted to see if you can, as we start to talk about your book, Deborah, is I would love for you to just clarify and share um, with the listeners, explain for the listeners what is the edge of depression, the edge of
Ah,
depression.
most people don't know that there is something like an edge. And what I mean by that is when you fall into depression, I liken it to falling into a dark, cold tunnel where you can't see the sides, there's no light, and you don't know how you got there, you don't know how long you're going to be there, and it all seems, but the tunnel has this precipice, and if you're aware of what's happening, you can actually stop yourself at that edge. That's what I'm referring to. There's a moment, but it takes a lot of awareness in order to be able to know that that's happening there. If you're aware of what's going on, and I talk a lot about awareness in the book, um, there is that moment and you can go, wait, wait, wait. And you can stand at the edge and go, I'm stepping back.
Yeah, stepping back. Gotcha, gotcha. And that was actually leading to my next question. Um, you know, how can we recognize this when we reach it? Or before it happens, right? In a proactive way. I'm assuming your book um, has some anecdotes and methods and strategies to identify if you are at or near the edge of depression, and not just recognize it, but also how to handle it.
First of all, I have to say it takes work.
Okay.
It takes a willingness to work with what's going on, to train yourself to be more aware and alert to the circumstances, to
Mhm.
the things that trigger you.
I see.
Most of the time, I know for me, for years living with depression, I had no idea. Something would happen boom over the edge, that was it. Until I finally got diagnosed with depression, and we started to unravel all of this stuff.
Right.
And my therapist started to make distinctions between things that for which I never had distinctions.
Hmm.
Like there are people that have the blues that just get sad. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean
Yeah.
I'm so sorry? You know, he had to explain it to me. And slowly I began to understand that kind of distinction. And when you start to see the differences, that's when you start to have a glimmer that there actually is edge. You know, people who are sad, there's something that happens, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
And I went, really? That happens to people?
Hmm.
Now I have that experience. But before I had that distinction, before I understood, it was like a foreign language.
Ah, I see. I see. So it took a while to understand that.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, I got you. Wow, that's yeah, that's amazing, and I love how you visualize what the edge of depression looks like, right? Because um, in my mind, it would be quite relatable from person to person, no matter who is going through the depression. You're at this top, at this edge, and there's this dark tunnel,
Right.
and just visualizing what that looks like and equating that to where we are in our current state. Um,
Yes.
if we are going through depression, is very, very relatable, and it draws a vision in the reader's mind's eye, I would imagine. um, and they can determine if that's where they are as well. I wanted to talk with you um, about taking a stand, right, against depression,
Yes.
which a big part of your book is about, right? But before we dive into that, I want to ask you about stories. Okay, we all have our story, and so there's a lot of people who have encountered depression also consider the depression as part of their story. um, First off, I want to know what your thoughts are on that. And is there a healthy way that we can have depression part of our story without feeling victimized by it, or without having it define who we are today?
What a great question. I've done a lot of work over the years. My
Hmm.
therapist that diagnosed me, that was back in 96.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's been a long time and a lot of work. And those of us who've lived with depression a lot of our lives do feel victimized. But again, it comes back to awareness
Hmm.
and comes back to a commitment to say, wait, I don't have to go there.
Yes.
And if you can make that statement, keep making that statement,
Hmm.
that's the standard.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what the circumstance is. And let me tell you, I've been through a lot of circumstances, some of which have been pretty tough. Losing my parents, two bad car accidents, neither through my fault. Thing, life throws you curveballs all the time, and anything can throw you over the edge. And by the way, good stuff can throw you over the edge. I had that happen recently.
Hmm. Hmm.
I had one moment. It's pretty cool. I had several good things. I've been doing a lot of them the last year, and I came back from back-to-back signings. And Monday, Tuesday, nothing got accomplished. People didn't call me back. I couldn't reach people. A plus B didn't equal C.
Wow.
And Wednesday, I went, wait a minute. Are you kidding me? I'd stumbled to the edge and was teetering over it. And I went, it's about how good can you have it, people.
Yeah.
So I just started to laugh because even good
Hmm.
stuff, the thought was, what if it all works out? Then what?
Yeah.
There's anything. And at that moment, when I realized that thought had happened and my reaction had happened, I
Yeah.
went, wait, walk it back. Enough of this. And suddenly people were calling me back and we could reach people and it all made sense to flow. So it's whatever the circumstance is, whether it's a thought that you have, something happens, or something just happened that you expect should have happened, any of those kinds of things. The more aware of those things you are, the more willing and committed you are to saying, no, I'm not
Mm.
going.
Yes.
That's the first two big steps. And I talk a lot about that in my book, You Aren't Depression's Victim, which, by the way, it kind of evolved into a work. I ask a lot of questions that most people don't think about. I look
I see.
outside the box a lot. So
Hmm.
as they answer the questions, they start to become more aware of the stuff, what the
Yes.
things are that trigger them. how they react in certain situations, and then
Right.
they start to see what could they do instead,
Mm.
and that's pretty powerful.
That's very powerful. That's very, very powerful. And to me, Deborah, it sounds like it speaks to the improvements of oneself and the benefits that someone suffering with depression can get from reading your book, right? A
Mhm.
bolder sense of self, a better sense of self awareness, let's say a more empowered outlook on life, things like
Yes,
that.
yes.
Amazing. Fantastic. One thing I also wanted to know, because I know it's important to take a strong stand against refusing to be victimized by depression, refusing to let it control your life and navigate every waking hour of your existence, and even subconsciously, right? And you have the tools and methods to help and support those individuals within your book, as well as your workshops. But I wanted to know, as an author, as a workshop leader and a public speaker that speaks, who speaks on depression, has it ever been a challenge to talk to others about not being a victim of depression? Kind of like, don't be a victim, pull up your bootstraps and take back your life. Okay. But at the same time, trying real carefully not to diminish their depression, which I'm thinking is very real to them at the time,
Sure.
you know. Um, uh, but, but I guess basically somehow typically acknowledging their depression for what it is, but then go on to explain what is not.
I'm gonna answer slightly differently because how you phrased it, people could get a little confused by it. Because
Sure,
my stand is
sure,
for them taking a stand and empowering them to take a stand, not against that.
right.
And I have talked to people whose stories have had my eyes go to the back of my head. I thank God I haven't gone sometimes to that level that people have.
Hmm.
And I'd be the first to say, listen, that is incredibly intense. And I am thrilled that you're here in front of me that we can look at this. Because
Hmm.
I have to validate what they've been through. It's been
Hmm.
incredibly real, incredibly difficult, and has formed everything else in their life and how they think and what they do.
Yeah.
I would never say to somebody, you know, go up by bootstraps because that isn't the direction to go.
Right, right.
So when people come up to me and share their stories with me, sometimes it's very, very difficult for them too. And I share some of my story, and there are a lot of my stories in the book about depression spectrum, and they're very relatable,
Yeah.
which is why I knew they had to be in there.
Yes.
So to have them be willing to share even a part of that with me is a giant step for a lot of people.
Oh,
Sometimes
yes,
they never have,
absolutely.
and when they're willing to take a look at the book, because sometimes I'm just standing in the bookstore at the front saying, introducing myself and the book, and we talk a minute, and I say, "Take a look."
Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll turn to the questions and go, "Wow, I
Mhm.
hadn't thought about this before."
Mhm.
A
Mhm.
new thought, a new possibility. So
Mhm.
it's a book about hope and possibilities for people.
Love it. Understood. Hope and possibilities for people. And this is the hope that, there is hope from depression. There is a way out. And once you find that way out, and with your help in the book, then imagine the possibilities of who you can become, the
Yeah,
life you can lead, right?
sure. And I'm a living example of that.
Mhm.
When I started working with this therapist and started unraveling the stuff that had been going on for decades, and started to do the work,
Yeah.
out of that came a few years later me falling into becoming a journalist, becoming an environmental journalist. I didn't seek it,
Yeah.
but I was looking at maybe being a writer, and the opportunity just fell into place. I've always said the best things in my life fall in my head.
Yes.
Best
Right.
things. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been willing to do the work and continue to do the work.
Yes. You
So
have to do the
I
work.
forget who said, and maybe it was Goethe, I don't know, but somebody said, when you take committed action, you get big results. Something like that. I've just fractured the quote badly, but it's something like that. And I really remember that. So even when it's uncomfortable, even when I can be scared out of my mind to take a calculated risk, I know that taking a big step will lead to something I never anticipated that probably is going to make a difference for
Yes. Yes. And it's usually those things that you never anticipate
me.
that
Yeah.
that can really have an impact on someone's life, right?
I never planned to be a workshop leader. I
Hmm.
hope to be a good writer, but to be an author of books, it wasn't in my thinking. And be a
Hmm.
professional speaker, I listen, I took in 8th grade, I took a public speaking course, and it was excruciating because
Oh, was
I
it?
was, as a kid growing up, you couldn't get me in front of a room. I was the kid all the way through 6th grade. I never got up and gave a report. They'd call on me, I'd get up and I'd faint.
Yeah.
They weren't meant to talk to me, but I decided it was time to get through this thing. But
Yes.
being
Yes.
in front of hundreds and thousands of people, are you kidding me? I could never have imagined that.
Yeah, that's tough. And it's always been said that public speaking is up there in one of the most fearful things to do, than skydiving and other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. So, Deborah, I understand that you are a believer of finding daily inspiration, you
Oh, yeah.
know. And so, can you share with the listeners how daily inspiration can help us live a balanced, happy life?
Uh, how do I answer that? I find that when I find things that inspire me, and it's the
Hmm.
little things like I I do home organic gardening, and I walk out to my garden 4, 5, 6 times a day, sometimes just to stand there
Yeah.
and go, wow, look what's happening here. Look what I did. Or look, watch the birds flying in my backyard and all
Yeah.
the little things. And I
Hmm.
tell people that don't know what to do for inspiration, good. Go outside and be in nature for 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm, yes.
Guarantee you find something to lift you up.
Yes.
The little things are what makes such a difference because it takes us outside of what's going on up here and
Hmm.
puts our focus out there. Sorry about that.
Absolutely.
And when you can do that, it takes you out of the stuff just for a few minutes,
I'm sorry it takes you out of.
out of the stuff that's going on in thoughts and
Oh, yes, yes, the thoughts in your head, and
yeah.
and there's things we tell ourselves, right? We have that internal dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
Negative
it,
self-talk.
yes, the self-talk. Yeah, it gets us out of that routine, out of that rut,
Mhm.
to appreciate what's around us. And I am a huge believer of being in the present. And
Yeah,
so, to go out in nature and to take that time to be outward focused instead of inward focused,
right.
in taking pleasure in the little things that's around us, the beauty that nature reveals
Yeah,
by being outward focused, that really helps us to be absorbed in the present, you know?
I have a process that I discovered for myself when I was recovering from chronic fatigue, and I think it helped me start the recovery process. And this is what I call find three miracles. And
Okay.
I've passed it through to friends and colleagues for years.
Hmm.
You know, anybody says to me, things are so hard, it's coming together, I'm getting depressed. I say, here, let's do this. And I talk about the miracle process. And for me, it happened at the worst part of chronic fatigue. And chronic fatigue is something I hope never anybody go through because it robs you of energy, of ability to focus, ability to
Yeah.
do anything. And
Wow.
in the midst of this, I suddenly have this flash. Okay, great. Find three miracles and state them out loud. Because when you say things, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay, three miracles. What? So I was looking at the country. So the first one was sun was shining. Remember, you're in a cold, dark tunnel. You can't see the light. So for me to even acknowledge it was sunshine was a big deal. And next was I lived out in the country. There were a lot of birds flying all over the place. It was magnificent. So I said, oh, that's my second miracle. And my third miracle was I lived in a property that had a tree growing through it that sounded glorious. I said, that's my third miracle. So I stated my three miracles. And I went, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the next day I felt a little bit better. So I came up with three more miracles. And I said those out loud. You know, and the next day I felt a little bit better. And I did this for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
at the end of which I felt substantially better. Now I
Good.
still had chronic fatigue, but I didn't have the despair that went through it.
Ah, I see.
That's the difference.
I
And
see.
anyone can do it. It's a thing.
Right.
And it ups your awareness of what's going on around you. And by stating those things out loud, it puts your energy into that. It puts your focus into that and off
Yeah.
of you.
I got you. I got you. Wow. Three miracles.
Mm,
That's that. I mean, that speaks volumes right there. And what a great method. Um, Man, that is so awesome. So Deborah, how can the listeners follow you, connect with you, and maybe even pick up a copy of your book?
sure. I have a website, which is debraatlas.com, DebraAtlas.com. That's the only dot in there.
Okay. No, that's good. And your website will have the links to where they can get the book and other connection links.
Yes. And also it'll have links to, I do a training program, um, both for public and for companies I tailor. And the program is called Step Back from the Edge. And I can do it. I've done it as a keynote speech, as a half-day program, or a full-day program. And it is based on material from the book, and it takes a deep dive to it. So they can find out about that. And I have a new program that I'm literally launching this week, and it is a mentoring program, one-on-one mentoring via Zoom. And it is called Take Your Life Back. Take Your Life
Take your life back. Okay.
Back. It's a 7-session program. And there's basic, intermediate, and advanced, and everybody
Right.
starts at the basic.
Yep.
And it goes much deeper into the book than I'm able to even into the workshop.
Okay.
And it really has you recognize the stuff that stops you,
Mm-hmm.
the thoughts that you use to
Mm-hmm.
stop
Mm-hmm.
you, and what you can do about it all to really get moving again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's something to be really excited to get because, or to be about, because um, to be able to see those changes and those improvements, right? That I mean, that's a sweet affirmation, not just for you as the author and the workshop leader, with people you work with, but for them themselves.
Yes,
Once they see an ounce of improvement, then their empowerment just really skyrockets, right?
that's right. And their confidence and their skills in dealing with the circumstances and situations that have always triggered them. And I
Yes,
say to people, what if they didn't anymore? What if they didn't have to?
right,
What if when that stuff starts to show up, you go, I see for the first time, now I know what to do. I don't have to fall over the edge.
right.
Imagine what life would be like then.
You know what? That it would be absolutely limitless in what
Mm,
you could achieve.
that's right.
And as you said that, Deborah, it makes me think of my aunt, my mother's sister. And this happened a long time ago, back in 1982, and things like anxiety, chronic depression, and those things. They weren't as society wasn't as conscious about those as they
They
are
weren't
today.
talking about. We didn't talk about them at all. Yeah,
No, no, we didn't. And my aunt was going through something, just very unexplored at the time, and she was in a couple of homes, and so forth, and hospitals, and the long and short of it was the hospital prematurely released her and said she was fine to be released, and my husband my her husband, my uncle, brought her home, and about 4 days later, the long and short of it, she committed suicide. Found his gun in the bedroom and just and shot herself. And she was very, very depressed, and no one could understand what was going on with her and why she was feeling this way. And no one forces themselves to be in this state. No one wants to be in this state. And no one not many people can look at themselves and say, okay, why am I like this? And they're
not
just
when we're in that state. The whys, there is no way. And
no.
even if you ask the question, you can't find the answer because you can't
Right.
see past this.
Exactly. You can't see past that, right? I mean, because it's so real, it's so present, you know.
Yeah,
And she was to the point where she rarely said anything. She just had
that
this.
makes sense. Because
Yeah.
when you are living with depression, this is why you feel like a victim of it, because you don't
Mhm.
know how to talk about it. There's no language. One of the things
Right.
that I talk about in my book, You Aren't Depression's Victim, is how someone, a friend, a colleague, or a relative, whatever, the kinds of questions you can ask to begin to have them open up and find language.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to. And that's great. I'm glad you included that and you mentioned that, right? Because um I mean, then you're breaking through. You're making a difference. You're getting through to them, but
Yeah.
you have to find that language,
Mhm.
and unfortunately back then, very few people, if any, found that language or knew that they had to find a language to break through, you
And
know?
I'm one of those who went there. I someone who at 14, something happened,
Yeah.
and the only recourse I could find for myself because I saw no hope is I tried to commit suicide.
Mm,
And fortunately, someone called me and helped save me. They called right after I took all the pills they possibly could find, and
yeah.
and yet, we never talked about it after that.
No.
My siblings never knew this had happened until they read the book, because it
Really.
was hushed up. We didn't talk about depression, we didn't
Right.
talk about
Right.
anything.
Right. No, no, no. And it was real then and it's real now, you know? Yeah. So I'm glad to see the progress that society has made in acknowledging these things. But
And
I
I have to
feel,
credit Simone Biles
uh-huh.
because single-handedly, I credit her for bringing the conversation to the stage.
Yes.
And people reacted with huge emotions about it.
Yeah.
It started a conversation, and then other people jumped in and deepened it.
That's wonderful. Start that conversation, right? Deborah, you're the spark. You're the spark that is starting that conversation and that is sustaining that conversation. So I
Yeah.
truly, truly commend you for the great work that you're doing. The awesome anecdotes and insights you shared from the book with us on how we can take a stand and realize our true potential and the possibilities that we have in life once we decide and make the conscious decision to not be a victim to depression. Debra Atlas, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly, truly appreciate you coming on and sharing this with our listeners.
Thank you. My book, You Aren't Depression's Victim, the workshop, Step Back from the Edge, the mentoring program, Take Back Your Life. It's about people not having to feel victimized anymore and being able to say, we're doing something else. I'm going to be fully in life now. That's the point of all of it. And thank you for having me here
Abs-
today.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. And live, right? I'm
Yeah,
making the choice, the conscious choice to live. Oh,
to live
it's
fully.
and live fully. Thank you. Live fully. I mean, it's so inspiring, so inspiring. Again, thank you so much, Deborah, for coming on the show. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And look, you may feel like this at times, but in our daily struggles and adversities, um, we're never alone. And I want you to know that hope is always around the corner. I humbly ask that you please share this show with someone you know and love who needs motivation and support. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.